Well, good morning. Today we're in day 15 of our journeys with Jesus, and we are looking today at John 21. And this is a scene that shows up after Jesus' resurrection, so he's already been raised, and yet it's at a key moment. It's an important moment for the disciples and for Peter in particular. See, after they had witnessed the resurrection, Jesus had already visited with them a few times. The text tells us this in chapter 21. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. "I'm going out to fish," Simon Peter told them, and they said, "We'll go with you." And so they go fishing and they don't catch anything. And then Jesus shows up on the shore, but they're not quite sure who it is. And he says, toss your nets in over the side, and they haul back in fish. And Peter immediately realizes that this was Jesus. He jumps out of the boat and makes a beeline for Jesus, which is always a good thing to do. Make a beeline for Jesus. And after they cook this fish and they have a meal with Jesus, there's this very touching moment that many of us know this scene very well. They had finished eating, verse 15, and Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me more than these?" "Yes, Lord," he said, "you know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." And again Jesus said, "Simon, son of John, do you truly love me?" And he said, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And Jesus said, "Take care of my sheep." And the third time he said to him, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" And Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time. "Do you love me?" He said, "Lord, you know all things. You know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep." And, this is one of those key moments where Jesus is reinstating Peter. He is making sure that Peter understands his task, his job, the thing that he was called to. Peter affirms, "Lord, I love you." And I think many of us have found ourselves in that place before. "Lord, I love you." And what Jesus is saying to Peter is, look, you need to look after my people then. You need to be a shepherd for my people. You need to be out there looking after the sheep. Feed my sheep, feed my lambs. Take care of them. That is your job. That is your task. That is your high calling. And Peter is kind of like, well, okay, So Jesus goes on. He says in verse 20 and in verse 18, "I tell you the truth, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And then he said to him, "Follow me." And Peter turned and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved was following them. And when Peter saw him, he asked, "Lord, what about him?" And here's the two things that I want to take from this part here. First is that Jesus again begins his call for ministry to Peter. In Matthew, we know Jesus, when he meets Peter, he says, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." And here we are in John 20 and they're fishing, and Jesus' challenge to Peter is once again, "Follow me." Now, he doesn't say it, but "I'll make you fishers of men." You will be a shepherd for my sheep. You will be the kind of person who is with me, is following in my footsteps. And I think Peter's response is interesting. He's like, "What about this guy? What about him? What are you going to say to him?" Jesus' response is simple. Don't worry about him. What is it to you what John does? I'm talking to you, Peter. Here's our challenge, I think, for us today. Jesus has called you to follow him, and you say, "Lord, yep, I love you. I will follow you." Are we following him? Are we doing the things that he has asked us to do? Are we being fishers of men? Are we shepherding his sheep? Are we being the kinds of people who are following in Jesus' footsteps? And then the other challenge is, and have we stopped trying to justify ourselves by what others have done, right? Am I more concerned about what my neighbor is doing than what I'm doing? Am I more concerned with what this other person is doing than what I'm doing? Jesus is talking to each of us individually. Follow me. You follow me. And it doesn't matter what the rest of the world does. If we're following him, if we have set ourselves to walking in his footsteps, that's the task that Jesus has for us. It doesn't matter if it looks crazy to the rest of the world. It doesn't matter if it looks crazy to anybody else. If we are following him and we're doing what he has asked us to do, then we are his disciples. And that's what Jesus calls us to do. Follow me. So I hope as you go out from this point, that as we've looked at the life of Jesus, we've seen what he is like, we've seen what he has called us to, and now it's our chance to follow him, to do the things that he's asked us to do, to be the kinds of people that he has called us to be. Jesus says, follow me. Let us make that our rallying cry today.